You're sitting in the passenger seat of a car, and the street lights are hitting the glass in these long, rhythmic pulses of orange. Beside you, someone you love just said something. Maybe it was a joke that had a jagged edge, or a casual comment about your future that felt like a door slamming shut. The air in the car suddenly feels twice as heavy, like the oxygen just got replaced by lead. You can feel the exact spot in your chest where the words hit. It's a physical sting, a sharp, cold realization. And yet, when they glance over at you and ask, "Are you okay?" you don't say a word. Or worse, you do that thing. You know the thing. You let out that small, practiced puff of air. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. And you say, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired, I guess." But here's the thing. You aren't fine. You're currently drowning in a 3-inch puddle of your own resentment. You're replaying what they said over and over, dissecting it like a forensic scientist, looking for the malice or the carelessness. You've already written 3 different versions of a confrontation in your head. One where you're calm and logical, one where you're rightfully angry, and one where you just cry. But externally, you're just looking at the GPS. You're choosing silence. Look, it's a specific kind of internal static, isn't it? It's the quiet alarm. You're screaming behind your teeth, but your lips are sealed shut with a glue made of fear and habit. You tell yourself you're being the bigger person, or that you're keeping the peace. But an uncomfortable human truth is that you aren't keeping the peace. You're just declaring a cold war against yourself. You're swallowing poison and hoping the other person feels the stomach ache. We do this because we've turned silence into a survival strategy. We've convinced ourselves that if we don't speak the hurt, it doesn't exist. We treat our emotions like a closed tab button on a browser that's freezing up. We just keep clicking it, hoping the screen will go blank. But the CPU is still worry, still overheating, still screaming in a language we've decided to ignore. Why do we stay quiet? Why is it easier to feel the burn of 1,000 unspoken grievances than to say, "Hey, that actually hurt my feelings"? Think of it like a brand identity. You've spent years building the low maintenance version of yourself. You're the person who gets it. You're the one who doesn't cause drama. You're the friend who is chill and easygoing. You've turned not having needs into a personality trait. But here's the problem. When you build a house out of I don't care, you can't be surprised when people start wearing their shoes inside. We stay silent because we're terrified that the moment we speak up, we lose our market value. We fear that if we become difficult, which is just code for being a human with boundaries, people will stop wanting to be around us. We treat our relationships like a subscription service where we're terrified of the unsubscribe button. We think that if we bring up a problem, we're providing a reason for the other person to cancel the trial. So, you edit, you delete, you buffer. You take the raw, bleeding data of your experience and you run it through a social filter until it's unrecognizable. You take a "you really hurt me" and you turn it into a "haha, all good." Look, it's like trying to run a high-end gaming laptop on a dial-up connection. You have all these complex, high-resolution emotions happening inside, but the output is just a pixelated, stuttering mess of, "I'm fine." You're sacrificing your reality for the sake of your reputation. And the worst part? You're resenting them for not seeing through a mask that you're working overtime to keep on. Let's talk about the evidence folder. We stay silent because we've been trained. Somewhere in your history, maybe it was with a parent who got defensive, or an ex who called you crazy, or a friend who just rolled their eyes. You learned that speaking your hurt leads to a secondary hurt. You learned that vulnerability is an invitation for someone to poke the wound. So, you started a folder in your brain. Every time you spoke up and it went wrong, you save the file. Conflict equals abandonment. Honesty equals conflict. Silence equals safety. Now, every time someone hurts you, your brain automatically opens that folder. It runs a simulation of the conversation. Before you even open your mouth, it calculates the risk-to-reward ratio of being honest. And the math always comes back the same. Stay quiet. It's safer in the dark. Here's the thing. You're using an old map to navigate a new city. You're treating your current partner or your current best friend like they're the person who broke your heart 5 years ago. You're punishing the people in your present for the crimes of the people in your past. It's an uncomfortable truth that silence is often a form of emotional hoarding. You're keeping all these hurts in a pile in the corner of your mind, thinking that you're protecting the relationship. But look at the room, man. There's no space to move anymore. You can't get close to anyone because the pile of unspoken things is in the way. You're living in a fortress of your own making, wondering why it feels like a prison. There is a very specific, very toxic hope that lives in the heart of the silent person. It's the hope that if they love us enough, they shouldn't need us to speak. You're sitting there in the silence, and you're waiting for them to notice. You're dropping micro cues. You're sighing just a little bit louder. You're being a bit more clipped with your answers. You're creating an atmospheric disturbance in the hopes that they'll ask, is something wrong? And when they don't, when they just keep eating their dinner or scrolling through their phone, you take that as a sign that they don't care. You think, if they really knew me, they'd know I'm hurting right now. The fact that I have to tell them means the connection is already broken. Look, this is the romanticization of the unspoken. We've watched too many movies where people just know. But here's the reality. People are distracted. People are clumsy. People are living inside their own heads, fighting their own ghosts. When you stay silent and expect mind reading, you're setting up a loyalty test that the other person doesn't even know they're taking. And when they inevitably fail it, because humans aren't telepathic, you use that failure as proof that you aren't loved. It's a rigged game. You're hiding the treasure map and then getting angry that nobody found the gold. Communication isn't a failure of intimacy. It's the engine of it. By staying silent, you're starving the relationship of the very information it needs to survive. You're keeping them in the dark and then blaming them for tripping over your feet. What happens to the hurt when it doesn't get spoken? Where does it go? It doesn't just evaporate. It's not like a read receipt that eventually disappears. It's energy, and according to the laws of physics, energy has to go somewhere. So it goes inward. It becomes internalized friction. Think of it like a pressure cooker with a blocked valve. The heat stays on. The water turns to steam. The pressure builds and builds. On the outside, the pot looks fine. It's stainless steel. It's shiny. It's sitting quietly on the stove. But inside, the molecules are screaming. When you stay silent, the hurt turns into resentment. And resentment is a slow-acting acid. It eats away at the benefit of the doubt. It turns, they forgot to call, into they don't respect me. It turns, they made a mistake, into they're a selfish person. You start scorekeeping. You start collecting evidence of their flaws to balance out the unspoken debt of your hurt. And then, one day, maybe it's over something tiny, like a dropped spoon or a late text. The valve finally snaps. You explode. You bring up things from 6 months ago. You say things you can't take back. And the other person, they're blindsided. They have no idea where this is coming from. To them, the last 6 months were fine. To you, it's been a war zone. Look, this is the explosive cost of silence. You think you're avoiding a fight by staying quiet, but you're actually just deferring it with interest. You're trading a 10-minute, uncomfortable conversation today for a relationship-ending explosion next year. You're not saving anything. You're just building a bigger bomb. There's a secret, dark satisfaction in being the one who suffers in silence. It's the martyr complex. It's the feeling that your silence makes you better than the person who hurt you. You think, look at me. I'm taking all this pain and I'm not saying a word. I'm so selfless. I'm so strong. They have no idea how much I do for this relationship by staying quiet. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Being a martyr is just a way to avoid being a human. It's a way to maintain moral high ground without actually doing the hard work of being vulnerable. When you stay silent, you get to keep your perfect record. You never have to admit that you're needy, or sensitive, or insecure. You get to be the victim in a story where you're also the hero. But look, nobody can love a martyr. They can only pity them, or eventually grow to resent them, because the martyr isn't actually present in the relationship. They're just a statue of patience. When you stay silent, you're denying the other person the chance to be a good partner. You're taking away their opportunity to apologize, to make it right, to grow. You're treating them like a child who can't handle the truth. And you're treating yourself like a saint who shouldn't have to tell it. It's a lonely way to live. You're surrounded by people, but you're the only one who knows what's actually happening. You're the main character of a tragedy that only has an audience of one. We stay silent because we've convinced ourselves that no conflict equals a good relationship. It's a mirage. We think we're walking toward an oasis of peace, but we're actually just walking deeper into a desert of emotional distance. Think of conflict like a localized forest fire. It's scary, it's hot, and it looks destructive. But in nature, those small fires are what clear out the dead brush so new things can grow. You stay silent to avoid the fire. The dead brush just keeps piling up. The unspoken starts to rot. Eventually, you don't have a forest anymore. You just have a tinderbox, waiting for a single spark to level everything. Look, peace that depends on you swallowing your own tongue isn't peace. It's a hostage situation. You're holding your own happiness ransom in exchange for the appearance of harmony. You smile at the dinner table. You laugh at the jokes. You say, "I love you" before bed, but you're doing it from behind a reinforced glass wall. You think you're being harmonious, but here's the thing. Harmony requires two different notes to be played at once. If you're just muting your own note to make sure it doesn't clash with theirs, you aren't making music. You're just making silence. We stay silent because we're afraid of the vibration of a disagreement. We're afraid that if we say something hurts, the whole structure will collapse. But a structure that collapses because you said, "Ouch," was never really standing to begin with. You're protecting a house of cards while acting like it's a castle. There's a price you pay for every word you don't say. It's not just the relationship that suffers. It's your own sense of existing. When you stay silent about your pain, you're essentially telling your own brain that your feelings are low priority. You're sending a memo to your subconscious that says, "This person's comfort is more important than my reality." Do that enough times, 21, 10 times, 50 times, 1,000 times, and the you starts to get blurry. You start to lose the ability to even identify what hurts. It's like living in a room where the carbon monoxide detector is going off, but you've decided to just put a piece of tape over the siren. Eventually, the noise stops, but the air is still toxic. You just get used to the headache. You just get used to the lethargy. Look, this is the erosion of the self. You become a responsive entity rather than an active one. You become the shape of the container you're in. If you're with someone who is loud and takes up space, you become small and quiet to accommodate them. If you're with someone who is fragile, you become the strong one until your bones start to crack. You feel invisible because you've made yourself transparent. You've stopped bumping into people because you've retracted all your edges. You think you're being easy to love, but an uncomfortable human truth is that you're becoming impossible to know. Because there's nothing to grab onto. You're just a smooth, silent surface reflecting whatever they want to see. Let's talk about the trap. When we stay silent about a hurt, we often start testing the other person. We think, if they really loved me, they'd see I'm upset. If they were a good person, they'd realize that what they said was wrong. It's a game of emotional hide and seek. But you haven't told the other person you're playing. You're hiding in the closet of your own mind, waiting for them to find you. And every minute they spend not finding you, you're adding a mark against their character. 5 minutes since the comment, they're still talking about their day. They don't care. 10 minutes. They're asking what's for dinner. They're selfish. An hour. They're going to sleep. They never loved me. Look, you're setting them up for a failure they can't avoid. You're using your silence as a weapon of moral superiority. You're creating a narrative of betrayal out of a situation where the other person is just existing. They aren't ignoring your pain. They're just not aware of it because you've become a world-class actor at pretending everything is fine. You're winning an Oscar for Best Supporting Friend, who is actually dying inside, and then you're mad that the audience isn't giving you a standing ovation for your suffering. It's a self-inflicted wound. You're bleeding in the dark and getting angry that nobody is bringing you a bandage. But how can they? They can't see the blood, and you're wearing a shirt that says "I'm great." At the core of the silence is the great fear. The fear of being too much. You've been told maybe by a parent, an ex, or just the general vibe of the world that emotions are messy, that needing things is dramatic, that being hurt is sensitive. So you've decided to be just enough. You've calibrated yourself to be the exact volume that doesn't disturb the neighbors. You stay silent because you're afraid that if you speak your hurt, you'll be labeled as the problem. You're afraid that if you say "I'm sad," they'll say you're always sad. Look, we treat our emotional needs like they're a limited resource. We think we only have a certain amount of grace we can ask for before the account runs dry. So we save it. We save it for the big stuff. We stay silent about the small hurts because we're saving up for when we really need to speak. But here's the thing. The small hurts are the big stuff. The small hurts are the bricks. If you don't fix the bricks, the wall is going to fall down anyway. By trying not to be too much, you're becoming not enough. You're becoming a hollowed out version of a person. And the irony is that the person you're trying to keep, the one you're staying silent for, actually wants the too much version of you. They want the person, not the polite ghost. They can't love the parts of you that you've hidden in the basement. They can only love the parts you put in the light. If you keep the hurt in the dark, you're essentially saying, this part of me isn't worthy of your love. And that's a lie you're telling both of you. We have to talk about the way technology has made our silence even louder. In the old days, if you were hurt, you had to sit in the same room as the person. They could see your face. They could hear the way your voice went flat. There was a physical pressure to resolve things because the tension was in the air. Now we have the slow fade. You get hurt by a text, so you just don't reply. Or you reply with a K. Or you wait 6 hours to respond because you want them to feel the weight of your absence. You're using the digital distance to perform your hurt without ever having to name it. Look, the K is a shield. The read receipt is a weapon. You're communicating through the absence of communication. But here's the problem. Digital silence is the most malleable thing in the world. The other person can interpret your silence 100 different ways. They can think you're busy. They can think your phone died. They can think they did something wrong, but they don't know what. So they get defensive. You're trying to send a specific message. I am hurt. But what they're receiving is a blank screen. And a blank screen is a Rorschach test. They're just going to see their own insecurities reflected back at them. You stay silent online because it feels safer than a phone call. It feels like you have more control, but you've actually lost all control. You've handed the narrative of your hurt over to the other person's imagination. And look, imagination is a terrible place to store a relationship. You can tell your mouth to stay shut. You can tell your thumbs to stop typing, but you can't tell your body to stop feeling. There's a famous concept that the body keeps the score. When you stay silent about a hurt, your body has to hold that tension. It goes into your jaw. It goes into your shoulders. It goes into your stomach. Have you ever noticed that you get a headache every time you spend a weekend with a certain friend? Or that your back flares up when you're around a partner who doesn't listen? Look, that's not a coincidence. That's your body trying to speak the words you've suppressed. Your skin is trying to crawl out of the I am fine mask. Your heart is trying to beat its way out of the low maintenance box. Staying silent is physically exhausting. It takes a massive amount of metabolic energy to inhibit a response. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a minute, maybe 5, but eventually your muscles are going to cramp. Eventually, the ball is going to come screaming to the surface. When you stay silent, you're putting yourself in a state of chronic stress. You're living in a high alert mode because you're constantly monitoring yourself to make sure no hurt leaks out. You're burning out your own nervous system to protect a relationship that is already hollowed out by your silence. The uncomfortable truth is that your silence is killing you. Literally, it's wearing down your immune system. It's messing with your sleep. It's turning your own biology into an enemy. You think you're being strong, but you're actually just being a sponge for poison. There's a specific kind of sound that a room makes when something important hasn't been said. It's an echo of the thing you're choking on. You're sitting on the couch together, watching a show you both usually like, but the air between you feels like static. Every time there's a laugh on the screen, it feels like a mockery of the coldness sitting between your shoulders. Look, we stay silent because we think the silence will contain the hurt. We think if we don't give it a name, it doesn't have a shape. But silence isn't a container, it's an amplifier. Here's the thing, when you don't say that hurt me, the hurt doesn't just sit still. It starts to grow. It starts to color every other interaction you have. Suddenly, the way they chew their food is annoying. The way they breathe is a provocation. The way they exist in their own skin feels like an insult to your suffering. You're overanalyzing everything they do through the lens of the unspoken grievance. You're building a case against them. You're becoming a prosecutor in a trial they don't even know is happening. It's an uncomfortable human truth that silence is the most fertile ground for contempt. And contempt is the one thing a relationship can't survive. You can survive anger. You can survive a blowout fight. You can survive a betrayal. But you cannot survive the slow, silent rot of contempt that grows when you stop seeing the other person as a partner and start seeing them as a defendant. So, how do we stop? How do we break the vow of silence that's killing us? It starts with the most terrifying realization of all. Your silence isn't a gift to them. It's a theft. When you stay silent about your hurt, you're stealing their chance to be better. You're stealing their chance to love you correctly. You're deciding, unilaterally, that they aren't capable of handling your truth. You're making them smaller so that you can feel safer. Look, being seen is the goal, right? That's why we're in these relationships in the first place. But you cannot be seen if you're hiding the parts of you that are in pain. You're only allowing them to see the curated version of you, the easy version. And being loved for a version of yourself that isn't real is just a different kind of loneliness. To break the silence, you have to be willing to be the problem. You have to be willing to ruin the good vibe of their dinner. You have to be willing to say the sentence that starts with I and ends with hurt. It's not about winning the argument. It's about updating the data. It's about saying, hey, this thing happened, and this is how it landed in my world. I'm telling you this because I want us to be close, not because I want to punish you. It's a reset. It's clearing the cache. It's letting the pressure out of the cooker before the whole thing explodes. It feels like you're breaking the relationship, but you're actually just fixing the foundation. We're back in the car. The orange streetlights are still pulsing. The air is still heavy. They ask again, you okay? This is the moment. This is the fork in the road. You can take the safe path. You can say I'm fine and add another brick to the wall. You can drive home in the quiet and let the acid of resentment start its work. You can be the easy friend for one more night while the real you slowly disappears in the rearview mirror. Or you can take the dangerous path. You can take a breath. You can feel the lump in your throat and you can let it out. Actually, I'm not okay. What you said back there, it really stung. Look, the world won't end. The car won't crash. They might get defensive. They might get sad. They might even get angry. But for the first time in a long time, the two of you will be in the same room. You'll be dealing with the same reality. The hidden reason you stay silent is that you're afraid of losing them. But the uncomfortable truth is that you've already lost them by staying silent. You've lost the connection. You've lost the intimacy. The only way to find them again is to let them find you. Even the hurt parts of you, especially those parts. Stop being a polite ghost. Come back to the room. Speak the hurt. And then, for the first time, let yourself be truly known. Go easy on yourself, but don't go quietly. If this spoke to you in some small way, I'm really glad you stayed. And if something lingered with you, don't ignore it. Before you leave, take a moment and share what you felt. Even a simple thought in the comments means more than you think. Someone out there might quietly relate to your words. If reflections like this help you slow down and see things more clearly, you're always welcome here. So feel free to like this video and subscribe.